Is that thing even legal on the road? Hunter scoffed, leaning back against his custom-wrapped Lamborghini Aventador, arms crossed, lips curled into a smirk. His designer sunglasses reflected the midday sun and the hunk of rust sputtering into the parking lot. Everyone turned to look. The car, if you could still call it that, wheeled in with a whine and a cough. The muffler barely hung on, the paint had long given up trying to look respectable, and the engine sounded like it was on its final breath. Hunter's crowd of friends burst out laughing. "Yo, is that a museum piece or a retirement project?" One of them jeered, pulling out his phone to film the moment. Hashtag Grandpa's last ride. But the old man inside didn't flinch. He wore a flat cap, a tan windbreaker zipped to the top, and gloves with the fingertips cut off. His face was worn, but not weary. Calm, unreadable, like a poker player who always had the winning hand. He eased out of the driver's seat and looked directly at Hunter, his gaze cutting through the mockery like a scalpel. Hunter walked forward, still smirking. "Hey, Pops, you sure you're not lost?" The bingo hall's 2 blocks over. The old man finally spoke, voice calm but firm. "You kids laugh now, but I built the foundation your Lumbo was born on." The laughter died a little. Hunter tilted his head, eyebrows up. "You built what?" The man smiled slightly, his eyes glinting. "I invented the engine design that powers that car. Without me, your Lamborghini wouldn't even exist." A hush fell over the group. For the first time, Hunter's smirk faded. Hunter squinted at the old man, trying to gauge whether he was messing with him. "You invented the Lumbo engine," he said, voice edged with disbelief. "Sure, and I'm a CEO of Mars." His friends chuckled, but their laughter was quieter now, uneasy. The old man didn't respond. He just turned and opened the car's trunk. Instead of the usual mess of spare tires and old receipts, it held something unexpected, a leather briefcase, pristine despite its obvious age. With slow precision, the man pulled out a weathered folder. He handed it to Hunter. "Patent files," he said. "Read the name on the documents." Hunter snorted, flipping it open with the carelessness of someone expecting to prove someone wrong. But as his eyes scanned the top sheet, his jaw clenched. Alden R. Garrison, engine blueprint patent hashtag 1039427. His gaze dropped further. The date read April 16th, 1973. And beneath that, design schematic for multi-stage turbocharging system in high-performance combustion engines. "Wait," Garrison murmured one of the bystanders. "That's the name in all the textbooks. The Garrison method. It's like legendary." Hunter's face lost color. The old man, Alden Garrison, watched calmly, like he'd seen this moment unfold 1,000 times in his head. "You kids think legacy is what you post online," he said. "But real legacy that lives in the machines you build, the minds you influence, and the things that outlast you." Hunter stiffened. "So you're saying you made Lamborghini what it is today?" Alden shook his head. "No, I never worked for them. But my design was stolen by a man I once called my friend. He sold it off to a company in Italy. The rest is history." Hunter held the folder tighter now, as if it might disappear if he blinked too hard. "You got proof of that?" he asked, his voice quieter than before. "Oh, more than proof," Alden said. "I've got the whole truth. And if you're interested in hearing it, I'll tell you the story that never made the headlines." Alden sat on the stone bench near the edge of the parking lot, the sun casting long shadows as the afternoon ripened. Surprisingly, Hunter followed him, still holding the folder, curiosity wrestling with disbelief. A few of his friends lingered nearby, not daring to joke anymore. "I wasn't always an old man with a busted car," Alden began, stretching his hands as if shaking off the weight of memory. "Back in the early 70s, I was the golden boy of combustion design. Young, hungry, and a bit too trusting." He gave a short laugh, dry and sad. "I studied at MIT, graduated top of my class. Everyone wanted me. GM, Ford, even a startup called Vector offered me a spot. But I had a different dream. I wanted to make engines not just faster, but smarter. I wanted to make speed sustainable." Hunter frowned. "What do you mean smarter?" Alden looked at him. "An engine that adjusted airflow and combustion rate, dynamically based on real-time driving. That was revolutionary back then, the kind of thing that only existed in theory. And you pulled it off? I did, in a shed behind my mother's house in Detroit, using old airplane parts and broken car engines. I had one person helping me, my best friend, Carlo Venturi, an Italian exchange student. Smart as hell, charming. He believed in my dream, or so I thought. He paused, taking a long breath. We built the first prototype together. It worked. Smooth, powerful, efficient. I filed for the patent in my name, but credited him everywhere else because I trusted him. Alden's hands tightened on his knees. Then one morning, I woke up to an empty garage. No prototype, no Carlo, and no designs. He was gone. Hunter blinked. He stole it. He did worse, Alden said bitterly. He flew back to Italy and sold it to a man named Ferruccio Lamborghini. The silence that followed was thick. Lamborghini launched their first turbocharged concept less than a year later. They called it revolutionary. And there was my work dressed in gold and luxury. Hunter looked like he had just swallowed a stone. His gaze bounced between the folder and the old man sitting in front of him, still reeling from the story. But why didn't you sue them? Go to the press? Make noise? He asked, almost desperate now. If you had the patent, you could have taken them down. Alden nodded slowly. That's what everyone thinks. But reality is never that simple. He leaned forward, voice low but steady. When I contacted a lawyer to file a suit, I was told my application had been misplaced. Delayed. The final approval hadn't come through yet when Carlo took it. There was a 6-month gap where my idea was floating in limbo. And during that time, he filed an altered version of the design under his own name in Europe. Hunter's eyes widened. So he beat you to it. By 42 days, Alden replied. And in the eyes of the international court, that was all that mattered. You could have gone public. I tried, but I didn't have money, no connections. And Carlo? He became a rising star in automotive innovation. By the time anyone cared, the world had already picked its hero. Hunter rubbed his temples. That's insane. So, you just let it go. Alden's jaw tightened. No, I tried to build something of my own. I started a garage, took on custom engine work. But every time I tried to go big, doors closed. Investors backed out. Somehow, Carlo always got there first. He gave a grim smile. You see, when you're rich and connected, you don't just steal ideas. You erase the people who made them. The words hit Hunter hard. The glitz and glamour he was used to, parties, races, endless cash flow, suddenly felt cheap. But why keep that car? Hunter asked, nodding at the rusted vehicle that started this whole encounter. Alden looked at it with a strange softness. That car? It's the only prototype left from my original design. I've kept it running all these years. Not because it's pretty, but because it's real. Everything else was taken. But this is mine. Alden stood and walked back toward his car, his gait slow but full of quiet dignity. Come on, he said without turning. Let me show you what real engineering feels like. Hunter hesitated. His friends exchanged confused glances. Dude, you're not seriously gonna ride in that thing, are you? One of them asked, half laughing, but Hunter didn't answer. He looked at the Lumbo, the spotless showpiece gleaming in the sun, and then back at Alden's beat-up machine, a patchwork of time and resilience. Something pulled at him. Curiosity? Guilt? Respect? Maybe all three. He followed. Inside, the car was simple. No touchscreens, no Bluetooth, no ridiculous ambient lighting. Just analog gauges, metal, and leather worn smooth from decades of use. It smelled like oil, old books, and history. Alden cranked the ignition. The engine didn't roar, it hummed. Deep, controlled. Alive. Hunter blinked. Wait, that doesn't sound like any junk engine I've heard. Alden smirked. Because it isn't. This engine self-adjusts its combustion cycles in real time based on speed, incline, and temperature. It learns your driving style. And it's from the 1970s. Hunter stared. That's insane. You think luxury is about how much chrome you slap on a dashboard, Alden said, pulling onto the road. But it's about connection. Harmony between machine and driver. They picked up speed, and Hunter felt it. A smooth surge, no jerks, no lag. The car wasn't just driving, it was responding. This thing, Handles like it's reading the road, Hunter whispered. It is, Alden said simply. I designed it to feel human. Not perfect, but alive. As they glided around a sharp corner, Hunter looked at Alden with new eyes. The man who had just been a joke minutes ago was now commanding his full attention. This is better than my Lumbo, Hunter said quietly. It feels better. Alden gave a soft chuckle. Funny how the truth sneaks up on you once you leave the noise behind. They drove in silence for a while, the world blurring past. For the first time, Hunter didn't feel like a rich kid with fast toys. He felt like a student again, learning what it meant to build something that mattered. The car coasted to a stop at the edge of a hilltop overlooking the city. The sun was dipping low, casting gold over the skyline. Alden turned off the engine and let the silence settle. Hunter sat there, still holding the folder, still stunned by the ride he'd just experienced. His heartbeat hadn't slowed since they pulled away from the lot. You built this with scrap, he murmured. With knowledge, Alden corrected. Scrap was just a canvas. Hunter looked out the windshield. I've spent my whole life thinking success was buying things, showing people I made it. That's not success, Alden said. That's decoration. Hunter nodded slowly. So then what is success? Alden didn't answer right away. Instead, he reached into the glove compartment and pulled out another folder. This one was thicker. Inside were pages of handwritten notes, diagrams, ideas, blueprints, some faded, some new. This, he said, handing it over, is everything I never built. Designs I never got to finish. Systems that could change the automotive world. Not for luxury, for impact. Hunter's fingers brushed the edge of the paper, hesitant. Why are you showing me this? Alden looked at him, and for the first time, his expression softened into something like hope. Because you're not stupid, Hunter. You're just distracted. You've got money, sure, but that's not what makes a legacy. This, he tapped the folder, could be yours to bring to life. Hunter froze. You're offering it to me? I'm offering you a chance, Alden said. A chance to build something real. To learn what it's like to create instead of consume. To prove you're more than another spoiled kid with fast toys and empty claps. Hunter looked down at the pages, something sparking behind his eyes. But I don't know the first thing about building an engine. Alden smiled. Then you start by learning. The same way I did. From the ground up. A long silence passed before Hunter spoke again. And if I mess it up, then you mess it up, Alden said with a shrug. Failure's the only road worth driving when you're aiming for something that lasts. Hunter couldn't stop thinking about the folder. Later that night, after he got home, he didn't go straight to the gaming chair in his room or call up his friends to brag about the ride. He sat at his desk, flipping through Alden's blueprints. His world of Instagram highlights and luxury car meets felt suddenly empty. For the first time, he saw something that felt real, and it terrified him. He was still deep in the pages when his father stormed into the room. Hunter, Gregory Kensington snapped. Why was I informed that you were seen riding in that old man's pile of junk earlier today? With him. Hunter looked up, startled. How do you? I know everything that happens at my events, son. And when one of the guests told me you left in a rust bucket with Alden Rusk, I nearly choked. Wait, Hunter blinked. You know him? Gregory's face twisted. Of course I know him. I've known Alden since before you were born. He was once a promising engineer, until he threw it all away chasing dreams that didn't sell. That's not what happened, Hunter said defensively. He told me everything. He didn't throw it away. He lost it. His best friend stole. Stop. Gregory's voice was sharp. Don't you dare try to turn that man into some kind of hero. He was arrogant. He thought the world owed him a medal for being smart. But the world doesn't work that way. Connections matter. Image matters. He never understood that. Hunter was stunned. You mean, you were part of the industry that shut him out? Gregory didn't answer. He just walked toward the folder and snatched it from the desk. These ideas? They're dead. The world's moved on. No one cares about some dusty engine tricks from 50 years ago. Hunter stood up, fire rising in his chest. But maybe they should, because these ideas work. I felt it today. I finally understood what it means to build something. Gregory scoffed. Don't be naive. You're a Kensington. You don't build, you own. Hunter locked eyes with him. Not anymore. He took the folder back from his father's hands and walked out of the room. Hunter showed up at Alden's garage just after sunrise the next morning, hoodie on, no sports car, no entourage. Just him and the folder tucked tightly under his arm. Alden glanced up from under the hood of a customer's ancient pickup truck, one hand gripping a wrench, the other wiping sweat from his brow. He looked surprised, but not displeased. "You're back," Alden said flatly. Hunter nodded. "I'm in, if the offer still stands." A moment passed. Alden didn't say anything, just stared. Then, with a grunt, he stepped aside and pointed to the open toolbox. "Hand me the 10mm socket." Hunter blinked. "Oh, which one is that again?" Alden smirked. Lesson 1. For the next several hours, Hunter got his hands dirty. Literally. He dropped tools, misidentified parts, accidentally knocked over a can of oil, and earned himself a swat with a rag. But he also asked questions, listened, paid attention, and slowly, something started to change. He didn't just observe the work. He became part of IT.by lunchtime. Alden tossed him a sandwich and cracked open a cold soda. They sat on milk crates in the shade outside the garage, greasy and exhausted. "You've got a long way to go," Alden said between bites. "You learn slow." Hunter grinned through a smudge of grime on his cheek. "I've had worse teachers." "You've probably been worse," Alden muttered. They both laughed. Hunter's smile faded as he stared at the old car parked a few feet away. The original prototype, the one Alden had built with his own hands. "You ever think about selling it?" he asked. Alden shook his head. "It's the only part of my legacy no one could steal. I'm taking that to the grave." Hunter nodded solemnly. "Maybe not. Maybe it's the part that could change everything." Alden glanced at him. "How so?" Hunter sat up. "You said these designs were too advanced for their time. But what if now is the right time? What if we could finish your work and bring it to market? Not for my father, not for your old friends. Just us. A new startup. Independent. Underground. Disruptive." A spark flickered in Alden's eyes, but he kept his tone even. "You really think you could build that?" Hunter looked down at his oil-stained hands, then back up. "I don't know, but I want to try." The weeks passed in a blur of grease, calculations, and burned fingers. Hunter, once the definition of pampered privilege, now spent his days learning thermodynamics, torque ratios, and electronic fuel injection systems from Alden, who, despite his gruff exterior, proved to be a brilliant and relentless teacher. The garage became his second home. The Lamborghini collected dust. The rich kid's social circle had moved on, confused by his radio silence. His father, still furious, had tried grounding him, then bribing him, then threatening him. But nothing worked. Hunter was hooked. Not on fame or flash, but on creation. One Thursday afternoon, Hunter was adjusting a fuel line when the garage bell jingled. Alden looked up from his notes and suddenly froze. That a man in a sleek suit stood in the doorway, sunglasses on, too clean for a place like this. That Alden's voice went dry. "Miles." Hunter glanced up. "Who's this?" The man pulled off his sunglasses and smiled, slick and cold. "Just an old friend, though we haven't spoken in, 25 years. "Miles Beckett," Alden muttered. "The man who built his empire on my blueprints." Hunter's heart skipped. This was the guy. Miles stepped further in, his tone fake friendly. "Still playing with relics, huh? I figure by now you'd have let the past go." Alden didn't reply. He just stood his ground. Miles turned his gaze to Hunter. "And you must be the Kensington boy, the one getting his hands dirty. Your father's beside himself, you know. Said you were throwing away your future." "I'd rather build my own," Hunter said coolly. Miles raised a brow. "That's cute. But trust me, kid, this world doesn't reward idealists. It rewards execution, ruthlessness. That's why I made it." "And he didn't." "You made it by stealing," Hunter snapped. "And who remembers that now?" Miles said with a smirk. "The world remembers the product, not the story." He leaned closer to Hunter. "You want advice? Drop this. Go home. Let your father find you a real company to run. Because if you keep following him," he motioned toward Alden, "you'll end up with nothing but rust and regret." Then he turned back to Alden. "I came to give you a warning, old friend. If you try to launch anything resembling my product line, past or present, I'll sue you into oblivion. You know I can." With that, Miles slid his glasses back on, turned, and disappeared out the door. Hunter stood in stunned silence. Alden let out a slow breath. then walked over to a dusty filing cabinet in the corner. He unlocked it and pulled out a single folder. It was older than the others, yellowed and fraying at the edges. He handed it to Hunter. "Here," Alden said quietly. "This is the proof. Patent drafts, design timelines, journals. It's everything. If we're going to do this, we need to be ready for war." Hunter didn't sleep that night. That he stayed up in his room, scanning Alden's old documents, matching dates, signatures, sketches. The evidence was damning. Alden had conceived nearly every core system of Beckett Motors' original engine line years before Miles had ever filed for a patent. But it wasn't just about proving Alden's claim that it was about finishing what had been stolen. The next morning, Hunter called in a favor. An old acquaintance, Maya Ross, was now interning at a hot, rising tech accelerator in Silicon Valley. She owed him one, and she knew how to get things moving quietly. He pictured the plan in a 3-minute video call, carefully framing it as a startup concept, a revolutionary, sustainable engine platform using old-school mechanical genius and modern electric integration. Maya was skeptical until she saw the prototype Alden built. "This thing actually runs?" she asked, her voice high with disbelief. "Better than anything I've ever driven," Hunter said. "No bese. It's real." She paused, tapping her stylus against her tablet. "All right, send me a pitch deck. I'll float it to a few investors I trust, discreetly." Hunter spent the next 48 hours creating a presentation from scratch. He filmed the engine in action, showed the original patent drafts, even included footage of Alden explaining the science. He edited it like one of his viral videos, but this one wasn't about ego. It was about legacy. He sent it to Maya and waited. Meanwhile, Alden began making backup copies of all his notes, organizing the data in case they were ever sued. Hunter watched him, noticed the weight in his shoulders. The man wasn't afraid of losing money. He was afraid of being buried and forgotten all over again. Then the call came up. Maya's face lit up the screen. "You got a bite." Hunter's heart pounded. "Who?" "Someone big. Silent partner. They're not ready to show their face yet, but they want to see a full prototype and discuss licensing." Hunter looked over at Alden, who was still hunched over his drafting table. "Then they're going to get one." But just as hope sparked, it was nearly crushed. That night, the garage was broken into. The main hard drive was stolen. Papers were scattered. The prototype had been tampered with. Someone had sliced the battery connector and poured water into the intake valve. Hunter arrived first. His stomach dropped to the chaos. Alden stood in the center of the mess, expression blank. No yelling, no fury, just silence. Hunter swallowed hard. "Miles!" Alden didn't answer. He just walked over to a metal locker, pulled out a small black case, and set it on the table. Inside was an untouched USB drive. "I knew he'd come back," Alden said. "That's why I kept the real backups off-site." Hunter nearly laughed with relief. "You paranoid genius." Alden gave a weary smile. "Paranoia is survival when you've been robbed once." Hunter closed the case gently. "Let's finish this car. Then let's show the world what real engineering looks like." The next few weeks were a blur of sleepless nights, caffeine, and engineering chaos. Hunter dove into the world Alden had created, immersing himself in the gritty, raw process of building a machine from the ground up. Alden worked tirelessly beside him, coaching him through every mistake, every failure, every triumph. The prototype started to take shape, a beautiful fusion of old-school mechanical genius and cutting-edge electric power. But as the car neared completion, so did the tension. The silent partner from Silicon Valley had been in touch, but their demands were growing. They wanted results fast. They wanted to see something revolutionary, something market-ready, something that could turn the automotive world upside down. They wanted the car to be the star of the pitch. Hunter felt the weight of it all. He wasn't just building a car. He was building a chance to change everything. His life, Alden's, and the future of their entire project. But the pressure was taking its toll on both of them. Alden had been working nonstop, his hands trembling as they tightened the last bolts into place. Hunter felt the mounting stress, too, his nerves fraying with each passing day. And then, just as the prototype was ready for its first test drive, everything nearly unraveled. Hunter stood by the garage door, watching Alden climb into the driver's seat, adjusting the rearview mirror. The engine hummed quietly beneath the hood. Smooth, powerful, ready. Ready? Hunter asked, trying to keep his voice steady. Alden shot him a small, confident grin. Always. He pressed the pedal. The engine roared to life, then sputtered and stalled that Hunter's heart sank. What the hell? Alden slammed the steering wheel in frustration. It's the battery connection. We didn't secure it well enough. Hunter moved to open the hood, but Alden stopped him. No, it's my mistake. I should have seen it coming. Hunter stood still, his eyes locked on the prototype, frustration bubbling in his chest. But then he took a deep breath. This wasn't just Alden's fight. It was theirs. They both had to finish it. Hunter stepped forward and grabbed the toolbox. Let's fix it. Together. In the late hours of the night, they worked side by side, reconnecting, reattaching, testing. Every step forward felt like a battle, like the universe was trying to tell them they weren't meant to succeed, but they didn't stop. Finally, when the sun began to rise, the car was ready again. This time, when Alden revved the engine, it didn't stall. It roared, powerful and smooth, like a beast awakened. Hunter's heart raced in his chest. He stepped back and looked at Alden. This is it. Alden smiled, a rare, genuine smile. This is the start. The air outside the garage was crisp, the early morning sun casting long shadows over the open road. The world was still quiet, waiting. Alden wiped his hands on a rag, then stepped into the driver's seat of the prototype, his eyes scanning the dashboard one last time. Hunter leaned against the garage door, his breath caught in his throat. The moment of truth had arrived. They had spent countless hours working on this car, but now it was time for the world to see if it could really perform. Alden looked over at him. You ready? Hunter nodded, his voice steady despite the nerves swirling in his stomach. Let's do this. Alden grinned and revved the engine. The sound of the engine roaring to life was nothing like anything Hunter had ever heard before. It wasn't the aggressive, loud roar of the sports cars Hunter was used to. It was something smoother, more controlled, powerful but refined. It was a promise of what the future could be. The car shot forward down the dirt road that led to the main street. Hunter's heart raced in sync with the engine, and for the first time in weeks, he felt a sense of pure exhilaration. But then, nothing went as planned. The car started to swerve slightly. Alden's grip on the wheel tightened. His face fell. What's happening? Hunter shouted, his pulse quickening. It's the suspension, Alden said through gritted teeth. We didn't account for the weight distribution with a new engine. It's throwing off the balance. Hunter's mind raced. This could ruin everything. But then Alden's focus sharpened. He maneuvered the car through the turns, every move calculated, controlled. And after a few tense moments, the car stabilized. It felt right again. All right, Alden said with a deep breath, the tension slowly leaving his body. We've got it. Hunter grinned. Are we actually doing this? Alden looked over at him. We're doing more than that. We're creating something no one else can. Something they won't even see coming. The next few minutes were a blur of acceleration, sharp turns, and bursts of speed. The car glided over the road like it was born for it, effortlessly shifting through gears, taking turns with a grace that no vehicle had a right to possess. It was more than just a car. It was a work of art. Then they reached the end of the road, and Alden slowed down, bringing the car to a smooth stop. He sat there for a moment, his eyes scanning the horizon. This is just the beginning, he said quietly. But it feels damn good. Hunter climbed out of the car and stood beside him, looking out at the open road. He felt the weight of everything that had led up to this moment. They had created something beautiful, something that could change everything. But before they could savor their victory, a familiar sound interrupted the peace, the distant rumble of an engine approaching that Hunter's heart dropped. No, it can't be. Alden turned to see a sleek black car speeding toward them down the same road. It was unmistakable, the polished chrome, the logo on the hood. A car that screamed power, money, and influence that Hunter's jaw clenched. It's him. Alden's face darkened. Miles. The car screeched to a halt just a few feet away, and Miles Beckett stepped out, a cold smile on his face. His eyes flicked over to the prototype, and his smirk only grew wider. Well, Miles said, his voice dripping with arrogance. "Looks like you actually finished it. Too bad you didn't think it through, though." Hunter stepped forward, a sense of calm settling over him despite the tension. "What do you want, Miles?" Miles didn't answer immediately. Instead, he glanced at Alden, his gaze calculating. I never thought you'd be dumb enough to actually build this thing. But here we are, and now it's mine." Hunter's stomach twisted. "What are you talking about?" Miles stepped closer, his voice lowering. "I own the patents. I own the designs. And now that you've finished it, I'm going to take it. All of it." Hunter felt the blood drain from his face. "No, this is ours. You can't just steal it." Miles laughed, his tone condescending. "Watch me." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a set of papers, flashing them like a weapon. "You're not the first people to try to take me on, Alden, and you sure won't be the last. But you'll be the easiest to crush." Hunter's mind was racing. He could feel the weight of Miles' words hanging in the air, suffocating the space between them. It wasn't just about the car anymore. It was about ownership, legacy, and the lengths one man would go to in order to control it all. Miles had the patents, the legal documents. But Alden had the truth, and they both knew it. Hunter stood his ground, his hands clenched into fists at his sides. He could feel his pulse pounding in his temples. "You can't just take it," Hunter spat. "You didn't build this. You didn't earn it." Miles' smile widened, a predatory gleam in his eyes. "That's where you're wrong, kid. I earned it the moment you decided to finish it. All the ideas, the designs, the breakthroughs, everything that's in that car, I own it. And now I'm going to make a fortune off it." Alden stepped forward, his voice low but firm. "You may own the patents, Miles, but you don't own me or my work. This car is mine, and I'm not going to let you turn it into another one of your hollow success stories." Miles chuckled darkly, folding the papers back into his briefcase. "You're out of your depth, Alden. And you," he nodded at Hunter, "you're just a pawn in this game." But Hunter wasn't backing down. Not now. Not when everything they'd worked for was hanging by a thread. "You think you could just waltz in here and take what's ours?" Hunter's voice was sharp, the anger rising in his chest. "You don't get to rewrite history. Not this time." Miles took a step closer, his eyes narrowing. "What are you going to do about it, kid? You're playing in a league you don't even understand." Hunter looked at Alden, who met his gaze with a silent nod. "Watch us." Hunter grabbed the files Alden had kept hidden in his jacket pocket. The original documents, the notes, the journals that detailed every breakthrough, every step they'd taken to perfect the engine. They weren't just scribbles. They were evidence of the truth, proof that Alden had conceived the prototype long before Miles ever had a chance to claim it. He held them up in front of Miles. "This isn't just a car. It's history, and you're not taking it from us." Miles' smirk faltered for just a second. He hadn't expected this. He hadn't expected them to come prepared. "You think those papers will save you?" Miles sneered. "You're not the first person to try and prove ownership. This will be in the courts for years, and by then, no one will care about this thing." But Hunter wasn't done. He knew that if they could get the prototype into the right hands, it wouldn't matter what Miles had filed. The world would see it for what it truly was, a masterpiece. The future of automotive engineering. "Let's take this to the investors," Hunter said, his voice full of resolve. "They'll see the value. They'll see the vision, and you'll be left in the dust." Miles' eyes narrowed, and for a moment, Hunter thought he might back down. But instead, Miles' lips twisted into a cruel smile. "You really think they'll listen to you?" To him, Miles pointed at Alden. "The man who built this thing and then let it gather dust for decades? The man who could have changed the world, but chose to stay hidden in his little garage? You've lost before you even started." Hunter's blood boiled. But as much as Miles tried to provoke him, Hunter knew they couldn't let him get under their skin. The battle had just begun, and this time, they wouldn't back down. He turned to Alden. "We're not just building a car, Alden. We're building a legacy, and we're going to make sure the world knows the truth." Alden's eyes softened, and for the first time in a long while, he seemed to shed the weight of his years of silence. "You're right, Hunter. Let's finish this." But just as they were about to turn away, Miles stepped forward one last time, his expression cold and calculating. "You want to play hardball, fine. But I'll warn you, if you think you've seen the worst of me, you're about to find out how deep this game really goes." With that, Miles turned on his heel and walked back to his car, the tires screeching as he sped off into the distance. Hunter stood there, his fists still clenched. He could feel the adrenaline pumping through his veins, the battle lines clearly drawn. The stakes had never been higher, but for the first time in weeks, Hunter felt a spark of hope. They had the truth. They had the prototype, and they had each other. Now it was time to take it to the next level. The days that followed Miles' departure were filled with tension. Alden and Hunter worked relentlessly, fine-tuning the prototype, making sure every detail was flawless. They were preparing for a showdown, not just with Miles, but with the world. They knew that if they didn't get the prototype into the right hands, it would be swallowed up by the corporate vultures, and their dream would die with it. But just as they were beginning to question how far they could push, a new opportunity presented itself. IT happened on a late afternoon, while Hunter was reviewing some investor pitch materials. His phone buzzed on the table, the familiar sound of the notification catching his attention. He glanced at the screen and froze. It was an email from a mysterious contact. The subject line read, "The opportunity you've been waiting for." Hunter opened the email and skimmed the text, his eyes widening as he read that IT was an invitation to a private investors event, an exclusive invitation-only showcase for tech and automotive innovators. It wasn't just any event. It was the kind of event where investors from Silicon Valley, Europe, and Asia would be looking for the next big thing. The car of the future. And there it was. The car they had built. Hunter felt a rush of adrenaline as he scanned the email. It was the chance of a lifetime, an opportunity to present their prototype to the right people, to take down Miles and anyone else who would try to steal it. But the clock was ticking. The event was in 2 weeks. Hunter quickly dialed Alden's number. "Alden," Hunter said when the phone clicked to life. "We got an invitation to the private investor showcase." Alden's voice cracked with a mixture of disbelief and hope. "What? Are you serious?" "I'm serious. This is it, Alden. If we can get this prototype in front of the right people, we can change everything. We can go public. We can make this ours. No more hiding. No more letting people steal our work." Alden was silent for a long moment. And when he spoke, his voice was laced with the same determination that Hunter had heard in him from the start. "Let's do it." The next few days were a whirlwind of preparation. Alden and Hunter worked day and night, polishing the prototype, getting it ready to be shown to the world. They cleaned every inch of it, added the final touches to the design, and practiced their pitch over and over until they could speak about the car without hesitation. Hunter also made sure to reach out to the people who had backed the project from the start. The potential investors they'd met before had all been cautiously interested in the concept, but they hadn't yet seen it in action. Now, with the prototype finally ready, Hunter knew they had a chance to secure the kind of backing that would make all their dreams come true. But as the event loomed closer, Miles' shadow loomed over them. Hunter kept his phone close, half expecting another email from him, a demand to back off, a threat to ruin their reputation. But there was nothing, just the silence of waiting. The night before the event, Hunter couldn't sleep. He tossed and turned, his mind racing with possibilities and doubts. They had the chance, but what if it wasn't enough? What if Miles showed up with something bigger, something more refined, something that could easily steal their spotlight? At around 3 a.m., Hunter gave up on sleep. He grabbed his jacket and went for a walk around the property, trying to clear his head. Alden had fallen asleep in the garage, surrounded by tools and spare parts, ready to make any last-minute adjustments. Hunter's heart swelled with gratitude. Alden had been the one to make this all possible. Without his knowledge, his dedication, his refusal to give up, none of this would have happened. Hunter stopped by the edge of the driveway and looked up at the stars, taking in the vastness of the sky. It felt like the universe was watching them, waiting to see if they would succeed or fail. Hunter turned to see Alden standing in the doorway of the garage, rubbing his eyes. "What are you doing out here?" Hunter smiled faintly. "Just thinking. I don't know why, but I can't shake the feeling that something's not right. I keep thinking about Miles, about the people who want to take this from us. I keep wondering if we're ready." Alden walked up beside him, his presence comforting. "We're ready because we believe in what we've built. We're ready because we've done the work. And we're ready because we don't give up, no matter what." Hunter turned to face him, his eyes meeting Alden's. For the first time, he felt completely aligned with the older man. They were in this together. No one could take that away. "You're right," Hunter said, taking a deep breath. "Let's make this happen." The next morning, they loaded up the prototype and set off for the event, their hearts pounding with anticipation. They knew this was their moment, their chance to prove not just to the investors, but to themselves that they were meant to succeed. As they arrived at the sleek, futuristic building where the event was being held, Hunter's nerves were on edge. They pulled up to the entrance, where a red carpet was laid out for the guests. A few luxury cars were already parked, and the sound of excited chatter and the hum of high-end vehicles filled the air. Hunter glanced at Alden. "This is it." Alden nodded, his expression unreadable, but his eyes sparkled with a fire Hunter had never seen before. Together, they walked into the building, ready to face their future head-on. The moment Hunter and Alden stepped into the building, they were struck by the sheer scale of the event. The lobby gleamed with polished marble floors, sleek glass walls, and minimalist decor that screamed high-tech luxury. It was clear this was the sort of place where dreams either soared or died. Investors milled about in sharp suits, chatting in hushed tones, their phones constantly ringing. The hum of excitement in the air felt like electricity. This was the future of technology. The Hunter's nerves started to creep in. This was everything. The car, the prototype, their hard work. It all came down to this one night. The eyes of the world, or at least the right people, would be on them. As they moved further into the venue, they saw that the room was filled with exhibits from various inventors, engineers, and tech entrepreneurs. Sleek, high-performance cars gleamed under the spotlight. Drones, AI-powered gadgets, and futuristic electric vehicles surrounded them. Some displays were cutting-edge, others were bizarre, but all had one thing in common. They were trying to stand out in a crowd of the next big thing. But Hunter wasn't concerned about the others. His focus remained on one goal: getting their prototype in front of the right investors. The kind of investors who would see the value of Alden's design and not just the flashy gimmicks of some corporate-backed competitor. They found their booth, a simple, understated display at the back corner. It wasn't the most glamorous spot, but Hunter knew that didn't matter. What mattered was the car. What mattered was how they presented it. Alden quickly set to work, ensuring the prototype was positioned perfectly, its curves catching the light just right. Hunter, ever the optimist, began working on the presentation. He had practiced his pitch for days, but now it was real. The stakes were higher than he could have imagined. Just as they were finishing setting up, a voice interrupted them. Well, if it isn't the old man and his pet project." Hunter's blood ran cold. It was Miles. He was standing at the front of the room, surrounded by a group of high-profile investors who seemed completely captivated by whatever he was saying. His polished, expensive suit was as out of place as his arrogant grin. Hunter clenched his jaw, trying to keep his emotions in check. He didn't need Miles to steal the spotlight. Not tonight. Alden, however, wasn't fazed. He nodded at Miles, his voice calm and steady. "Nice to see you again, Miles. I hope your presentation goes well." Miles's eyes flashed with amusement. "Oh, I'm sure it will. After all, I've got the future right here." He motioned to a glistening car next to him, a luxury electric vehicle that had all the bells and whistles of a high-end car, the kind that attracted attention from the elite. Hunter couldn't help himself. "Is that your idea of innovation?" he said, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "A fancy dashboard and a self-parking feature? That's nothing new." Miles's eyes darkened, but he didn't bite. Instead, he shot a look at the prototype. "So what's this? A relic? Some vintage dream you think people will care about?" Alden's hands tightened into fists, but he kept his voice even. "It's more than just a car, Miles. It's a vision that you can't see." Hunter shot Miles a glare, but before the confrontation could escalate, a voice from the crowd interrupted. "Is this the famous prototype? The one that's been creating all the buzz?" Hunter's heart skipped a beat. He turned to see a middle-aged man in a tailored suit standing in front of their booth, a badge that read Investor, Green Tech Ventures, hanging from his neck. His eyes were focused on the prototype, scanning its sleek design with an intensity that sent a jolt of excitement through Hunter. "That's right," Alden said, stepping forward to greet the man. This is the future of automotive technology. The investor smiled, nodding slowly as he circled the prototype. His eyes were sharp, his mind already processing every detail. I've been hearing whispers about this car, rumors about its potential. Hunter felt a rush of pride. They weren't just a side project anymore. They were about to become real, the investor continued. But I need to see more. I need to see what it can do. Alden's lips curled into a smile. You'll see. Watch this. He motioned for Hunter to help with the car's remote start system. Within seconds, the engine hummed to life, its electric pulse vibrating through the floor. The car shifted slightly, almost as if it was breathing. The investor's eyes widened in surprise. What is this?" he asked, his voice filled with awe. "This isn't just an electric car," Hunter said. "It's a new kind of power, one that doesn't just move the car, it moves the world. It's faster, more efficient, and more sustainable than anything you've seen before." The investor took a step closer, his curiosity piqued. "Can I take it for a test drive?" Hunter and Alden exchanged a glance. This was it, the moment they'd been waiting for. "Absolutely," Alden said, his voice firm. Meanwhile, Miles was watching from the sidelines, his expression a mixture of annoyance and disbelief. His car had already been admired by half the room, and yet here was Alden, showing off a prototype that seemed to steal all the attention. But he wasn't about to let this go to ask the investor, and Alden prepared to take the car for a spin. Miles stepped forward once more, his voice loud enough for the others around them to hear. "Alden," he called, "I don't think you realize what you're up against. You think you can show up here and take the spotlight with some forgotten relic? There's a reason people like me lead the industry." Hunter's eyes narrowed. "No, Miles. There's a reason you were never a part of the true vision. You're about to find out why." The tension in the air was palpable as Alden and the investor took the prototype for a test drive around the venue. Miles stood there, seething, while Hunter tried to ignore his presence. This wasn't about Miles anymore. It was about proving to the world what they had built. When Alden and the investor returned, the atmosphere shifted. The investor's face was alight with enthusiasm, his voice loud as he made his way to the crowd. "I've seen enough. This is the future, and I want in." The air seemed to crackle with electricity as the investor made his way back to the booth, his eyes gleaming with excitement. Hunter and Alden exchanged glances, their hearts racing with the thrill of success. They had done it. They had proven their prototype wasn't just a dream. It was the future. The investor turned to them, his voice firm and confident. "Gentlemen, you've got something here. Something extraordinary. This is not just a car. This is a revolution. I've seen the future, and it's sitting right here in front of me." Alden and Hunter stood in stunned silence, struggling to process the magnitude of what was happening. This was the moment they'd been working for. The validation, the chance to make their vision a reality, was finally within reach. "I want to take this to the next level," the investor continued. "I'm willing to back you. Green Tech Ventures can offer full funding. We'll provide the resources to scale, to build, and to market this car globally." But he paused, his eyes flicking to Miles, who was standing off to the side, watching the conversation unfold. "Go on," Alden said, his voice steady, though he could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on him. "I'll need exclusivity," the investor said. "You won't be able to accept offers from anyone else. Not from the corporate giants, not from anyone who might try to steal this idea. Green Tech will own the rights to the prototype, the patents, everything. We'll make it happen, but only if you commit to us." Hunter's pulse quickened. This was the opportunity they dreamed of. But there was a catch, a big one. Green Tech would own the rights. They would no longer be in control of their creation. Alden looked at Hunter, his eyes filled with hesitation. "Do we trust them? Can we give up control like this?" Before Hunter could respond, Miles stepped forward, his smug expression never wavering. Well, looks like someone's already sealed the deal. I hope you're not making the same mistake I made." Hunter's blood ran cold. Miles' tone was taunting, almost as if he knew something they didn't. "What do you mean?" Hunter asked, his voice low and cautious. Miles smiled, his eyes gleaming with a mixture of amusement and superiority. "Green Tech Ventures. They've been in the business of taking over small-time innovators for years. They'll offer you a deal that sounds too good to refuse. And then they'll own everything you've created. You'll be nothing but employees in the end. Hunter's jaw tightened. Are you trying to scare us, Miles? Because it's not working. Miles' smile only grew wider. I don't need to scare you. I'm just offering you the truth. I know this business. I know how the game is played. And I know how to keep control of what's mine. Alden's gaze shifted between Miles and the investor. He could feel the weight of the decision pressing down on him. They had worked so hard for this. But was it worth giving up control of everything they'd built? Would Green Tech really have their best interests at heart? The investor, sensing the hesitation, spoke again. I understand your concern, but let me be clear. Green Tech Ventures doesn't just invest in technology. We invest in people. We believe in you, Alden. Hunter, we believe in the future you're building. Miles laughed, shaking his head. Don't be so naive. You think they're doing this because they believe in you? They believe in your idea, yes. But they also believe in the money they'll make off of you. Alden felt a cold rush of doubt flood his mind. Miles wasn't wrong. There was always a price to pay when someone else held the reins. But was it worth risking everything to stay in control? Just then, a voice cut through the tension. It was the investor's assistant, a young woman with a clipboard, her eyes frantic. Sir, there's an issue. The other investors are asking about the patent details. There's a lot of interest in the prototype. They're ready to make offers, but there's a complication. The investor's face hardened, his earlier excitement slipping into something more businesslike. What kind of complication? The assistant hesitated, then spoke in a rushed whisper. Miles just handed over his own patent for a similar vehicle, and it's been approved. He's been working with another team, and they've filed for a competing prototype. Alden and Hunter stood frozen, the blood draining from their faces. Miles had beaten them at their own game. Not only had he stolen their ideas before, but he was now positioned to claim ownership of the very thing they had created. Hunter turned to Alden, his eyes wide with disbelief. He heeded this? He's been filing patents on a similar design all along. Miles stepped forward, his smile now triumphant. I told you I know the game. You were too busy focusing on the future. I was busy securing my piece of it. Now it's too late. Alden's fists clenched. You're lying. You can't just steal from us like this. But Miles only laughed. The patent office doesn't lie, Alden. And neither do the investors. I'm not the villain here. You two are the ones who gambled and lost. All you had to do was work with me. But instead, you made an enemy. Hunter's hands were shaking with rage. But Alden's voice was calm, despite the storm of emotions threatening to tear him apart. Not yet, Miles, Alden said, his tone as firm as steel. This isn't over. You may have the patents. You may have the investors. But you don't have the heart of this project. You don't have what we built. And that's something you can't steal. Miles' grin faltered for a moment, but he quickly recovered. We'll see. The clock's ticking. It's not over until the ink's dry. The tension in the room was palpable. Hunter and Alden stood, the weight of Miles' revelation hanging over them like a dark cloud. They had come so far, dreamed of this moment for so long, and now it seemed everything was slipping through their fingers. Miles had played them at their own game, and they had no idea how to fight back. But Alden wasn't one to give up easily. He stood tall, a fire burning in his eyes. He wasn't about to let Miles take everything they had built, not without a fight. Hunter turned to him, his voice barely above a whisper. We can't let him win, Alden. This is everything. This car, it's our dream. Alden nodded, his mind racing. I know. We've spent too much time building this for someone like him to take it from us. The investor, who had been standing silently off to the side, watched the interaction closely. His expression was unreadable, but the assistant, who had been with him from the start, looked anxious. She stepped forward, her voice tentative. We might be able to fix this, she said, her gaze darting between Alden and Hunter. There's still time. If we can prove the patents were stolen, if we can show the original designs. Wait, Alden interrupted. His eyes narrowed as he turned to face her. You said if. What do you mean if? The assistant hesitated before continuing. The problem is, Miles filed his patents years ago. He's been setting up a competing project with another team for a while now. He's been building a reputation. If we can't prove the original idea was yours first, The legal battle will be long and costly, and we might lose. But her voice trailed off as if she was about to offer something else. But Alden pressed, desperate for any hint of a solution. The assistant glanced over her shoulder at the investor, who had remained quiet. The man nodded once, and she continued, her voice more urgent now. But there's a loophole. If we can get the right people to vouch for your design, people who were involved with the creation, who know you were working on this before Miles started, then we have a chance. But it's risky. We'll need evidence, and we'll need to act fast. Hunter's mind was already spinning. They needed witnesses, supporters who could vouch for them. But how could they get that? The few people they'd worked with had all been so small scale. There wasn't anyone who could back them up in front of the corporate giants. What do you mean by act fast? Hunter asked, his voice hoarse with worry. The assistant exchanged another glance with her boss. The investor finally spoke, his voice cool and calculating. Green Tech Ventures will stand behind you, but I need to know you're ready to fight for this. If you want to go up against Miles and his team, you need to come prepared. We can't let this turn into a mess that drags on for months. We need proof, and we need it now. Alden clenched his fists. We'll do whatever it takes. We won't let him win. The investor nodded, his expression unreadable. Then let's get to work. The next few hours were a blur of phone calls, frantic messages, and searching through old files and sketches. Alden and Hunter dug through their archives, pulling out early designs of the car, blueprints, concept sketches, and even emails and notes that showed the evolution of their idea. But as the evening wore on, it became clear there was a lot more at stake than they had originally thought. Hunter stared at the papers in front of him, his mind reeling. We don't have enough. Miles has more connections, more resources. We need a way to get ahead of this. Alden was silent for a moment, his eyes fixed on the sketches. Then, a thought seemed to strike him. What if we went to the media? If we can get the right journalists involved, they'll dig into Miles' background. They'll expose the truth. People like him can't hide forever. Hunter's eyes lit up. You're right. If we go public with the story, show the world what Miles is really doing, it might just give us the edge we need. But we'll need someone who knows how to handle this kind of situation. Someone with connections. Alden's expression hardened. I know just a person. Hours later, Alden and Hunter were in a private meeting with a seasoned journalist named Elena Crawford. Elena had made a name for herself in the tech industry for exposing corporate fraud and shady business dealings. She had a reputation for getting the truth out, no matter how powerful the people involved. Elena listened intently as Alden explained the situation. We've built something special, he said, his voice firm. Miles is trying to steal it, but we have the proof. We just need to get the right people to listen. Elena nodded slowly. I've been in situations like this before, and I know how dangerous it can be. If Miles has the power to control the narrative, it'll be hard to break through. But I've got some ideas. I know who to talk to. We'll get the story out there. Alden felt a wave of relief wash over him. Finally, someone who understood the stakes. Someone who could help them take on the corporate machine. But you have to be prepared for a fight, Elena warned. This won't be easy. It's going to get ugly. But if you're ready, I'll make sure the truth comes out. Hunter clenched his jaw. We're ready. The battle lines have been drawn. Miles might have the patents and the investors, but Alden and Hunter had something he didn't, an unwavering determination to see their creation succeed, no matter the cost. The war for control of the car had just begun. And this time, it wouldn't be Miles who got to decide the outcome. The following days were a whirlwind of media attention, court filings, and press conferences. The story of Alden and Hunter's car and Miles' underhanded tactics spread like wildfire. Elena Crawford's investigative team worked tirelessly, uncovering every detail, every shady deal, every questionable move Miles had made his race to claim ownership of the prototype. But it wasn't just the legal battle that was brewing. The media attention was turning the tide in Alden and Hunter's favor, and the public was starting to take notice. The more they uncovered about Miles' attempts to control and manipulate the market, the more his credibility began to crack. IT started with a simple article, a detailed expose on Miles' previous ventures, highlighting the pattern of patents he had filed for competing ideas. Miles had positioned himself as the face of innovation, but the truth was slowly being revealed. He wasn't creating anything. He was simply stealing from others who had the real vision. The article was the first domino to fall. Within hours, the story was picked up by major news outlets. Headlines screamed about the deceptive billionaire who stole innovation. In interviews, former employees and associates of Miles' company came forward, each one adding to the pile of evidence that painted a damning picture of the young mogul. But the most shocking revelation came from a former investor who had once been a major backer of Miles' ventures. In an exclusive interview, the investor admitted that he had been approached by Miles to fund a similar car project years ago, but the idea had never gone anywhere. The investor had been promised the moon, but the car that Miles claimed was his creation was, in fact, something that Alden and Hunter had already been working on long before Miles ever entered the picture. With every new piece of evidence, Miles' empire began to crumble. His investors, the very ones who had been so eager to fund his latest venture, began to pull out. They were no longer willing to back someone whose reputation was tarnished, whose ethics were questionable at best. In the span of a few short days, Miles went from a beloved entrepreneur to a pariah in the tech world, but he didn't go down quietly. As the media storm continued to build, Miles fired back. He issued a statement to the press, insisting that he had done nothing wrong. He claimed that Alden and Hunter were simply trying to undermine his success because they were jealous of his achievements. He even went so far as to accuse them of plagiarism, suggesting that they had stolen his ideas for the CAR.IT was the same old tactic. The playbook of a man who had always relied on his wealth and connections to get out of sticky situations. But this time, it wasn't working. The public was no longer buying his lies. Meanwhile, Alden and Hunter were facing their own challenges. The media spotlight was intense, and the constant barrage of interviews, emails, and legal paperwork was overwhelming. They had expected the fight to be tough, but they hadn't anticipated how exhausting it would be to keep up with the demands as they sat in a small office in their makeshift headquarters, surrounded by stacks of paperwork and flashing screens. Alden looked at Hunter. His face was drawn with exhaustion, but there was a fire in his eyes, one that hadn't dimmed since the beginning of this fight. "We can't stop now," Alden said, determination in his voice. "Not when we're so close. Miles is throwing everything he has at us, but we have the truth on our side, and that's what counts." Hunter nodded, his hands clenched into fists. "We can't let him take it all. We've worked too hard. Too damn hard." Alden's phone rang, cutting through the tension in the room. He answered it quickly, his tone professional. "Alden." It was Elena's voice on the other end. "Alden, we've got something big. I think we're about to nail him." Alden sat up straighter. "What do you mean?" "Elena?" Hunter asked, leaning in to hear the conversation. "I've been digging deeper into Miles' past. I think I've found the smoking gun, something that connects him directly to the fraud. It's all going to come out, Alden. We've got him." Alden's heart pounded in his chest. "What is it?" Elena took a deep breath. "I found an old email thread. It's between Miles and a few high-ranking executives at Green Tech Ventures. The email chain reveals that Miles knew about your design years ago and tried to steal it from the beginning. They've been working together to manipulate the timeline of your invention, trying to retroactively claim it as their own. This is the smoking gun, and it's going to blow the whole case wide open." Hunter's jaw tightened. "This is it. This is how we win." Alden felt a rush of adrenaline. "Elena, send me everything. We'll get this to the press. We'll get it to the courts. We're moving fast," Elena said. "You'll have everything you need within the hour." As the pieces of the puzzle began to fall into place, Alden and Hunter felt the first true glimmer of hope. They weren't just fighting for the car anymore. They were fighting for justice, for recognition of their work, for everything they had sacrificed. The media, once focused on Miles' narrative, now shifted to Alden and Hunter's side. They were no longer seen as the underdogs. Now, they were the champions of innovation, the ones who had been wronged and were finally getting their due in a final press conference. As the media clamored for attention, Alden stood at the podium, his voice steady as he addressed the world. "This car isn't just a piece of technology. It's a symbol of what can happen when people believe in their dreams, when they fight for what's right. And today, we've proven that no one, no matter how powerful, can take that from us." Hunter stood beside him, his eyes scanning the crowd. We won this fight not because we had more money or more connections. We won because we had the truth on our side. Miles, once the golden boy of the tech world, was now facing a full-scale legal battle. His investors had abandoned him, his reputation was in ruins, and his patents were being contested in court. But the damage wasn't just financial, it was personal. The people who once looked up to him now saw him for what he truly was. Alden and Hunter had done it. They had fought back against the system that tried to steal their dreams. And in the end, they had emerged victorious. But as they stood together, watching the last of the press leave, they knew this wasn't just the end of a legal battle. It was the beginning of something even bigger, a future where their innovation could thrive, free from the shadow of corruption. And as the sun set behind them, they couldn't help but feel that they had finally won not just the battle, but their place in history. With Miles' downfall and the world now aware of the truth, Alden and Hunter were left standing at the precipice of something far greater than they had ever imagined. Their invention, the car, was no longer just a dream. It was a symbol of their struggle, their determination, and their unyielding belief in innovation. Now, it was time to take that symbol and turn it into something that could change the world. The legal battle had taken its toll, but the victory was theirs. The court had ruled in their favor. The patents were officially recognized as their own, and the media had celebrated them as the true innovators behind the revolutionary vehicle. But the real work was just beginning. Now, they had to prove that their creation could stand on its own in the marketplace. The world had been watching, and the world was waiting. Hunter sat in the conference room, the weight of the future pressing down on his shoulders. He and Alden had spent countless hours strategizing, planning, and refining every detail of their car. And now they were preparing for the ultimate test, launching their product to the public. "We've got one shot at this," Alden said, his voice low but steady. "We can't mess it up." Hunter nodded. "We've come this far. We've proven the car's worth. Now we need to prove it to the world." The team they had assembled over the past few months had grown stronger. Elena Crawford, who had been instrumental in exposing Miles' fraud, was now part of their inner circle, helping them craft the perfect media campaign. The investor from Green Tech Ventures, who had come to their aid in the aftermath of the scandal, was now fully invested in the success of their car. Together, they were building a network of allies who believed in their vision. The launch day finally arrived. It was a crisp morning, the sun shining down on the sleek, polished exterior of the car that had been the center of so much drama. Alden and Hunter stood in front of the crowd, their faces a mixture of excitement and nervousness. The car was parked behind them, glinting in the sunlight, a testament to everything they had fought for. The press, once eager to cover Miles' rise and fall, now turned their cameras toward the two men who had been through all. This time, it wasn't about scandal or betrayal. It was about innovation and redemption. Alden stepped forward, his voice carrying through the microphone. "Today is more than just the launch of a car. It's the launch of an idea that started with two men who believed in their dreams, even when the odds were stacked against them." The crowd murmured in agreement, their attention fixed on him. "We didn't get here by luck," Alden continued. "We got here because we refused to give up. We fought for what was ours, and today, we're proud to introduce a car that is not just a product. It's a revolution in motion." Hunter took the mic, his confidence evident. "This car represents everything we've been working toward: sustainability, innovation, and a future where technology works for the people. We didn't just build a car, we built a future." A cheer erupted from the crowd as the car was unveiled. It was everything they had promised: sleek, efficient, and packed with groundbreaking technology. The media cameras flashed, capturing every moment as the car was revealed to the world. The reaction was immediate. Social media erupted with excitement. News outlets covered every angle of the launch, and investors began to take notice. Alden and Hunter had done it. They had created a car that wasn't just a mode of transportation, it was a statement. Within days, orders for the car started pouring in. The public response was overwhelmingly positive. Critics hailed the vehicle as a game changer, and the automotive industry, which had been slow to innovate, now found itself scrambling to keep up. But the challenges were far from over. The car was a success, but now Alden and Hunter had to scale their operations, meet the rising demand, and ensure the car lived up to its promises. They couldn't afford to let their guard down. In the weeks that followed, they worked tirelessly. They toured factories, ensured quality control, and made sure that every detail of the car was perfect. They spoke at conferences, appeared on TV, and worked with designers to refine the vehicle's aesthetic. They had to stay ahead of the competition, and they had to stay true to their original vision. But despite the long hours and pressure, there was a sense of pride that filled their hearts every time they saw the car on the road. It was a tangible representation of their journey, from the legal battles and the media scrutiny to the final triumph of standing on stage with their creation. As the months went by, their company grew. They hired more employees, expanded their production capabilities, and began to develop new models of their car, each one more advanced than the last. They were no longer just two men with a dream. They were leaders in a new wave of innovation. The world had changed, and Alden and Hunter had been at the forefront of it. One day, months after the successful launch, Alden stood at the window of his office, looking out over the bustling city below. Hunter walked in, a cup of coffee in hand, and leaned against the doorframe. "You know," Hunter said with a grin, "I never thought we'd get here." Alden smiled. "Neither did I, but here we are." Hunter's expression grew more serious. "Do you ever think about Miles? About everything that happened?" Alden paused, his gaze still fixed on the city. "I think about it sometimes. But what happened with him? It was a part of our story, a chapter we had to go through. And in the end, it only made us stronger." Hunter nodded. "You're right. We wouldn't be where we are today without that fight, without everything that came before." Alden turned to face him. "And we won because we believed in ourselves. No one else could take that from us." Hunter smiled. "No one." They both stood in silence for a moment, the weight of everything they had accomplished settling in. The car had changed their lives, but it had also changed the world. And they knew, deep down, that this was just the beginning. They had taken control of their destiny, and no one, not even the richest or most powerful man in the room, could take that away from them. Alden and Hunter sat in the same office, only now, the atmosphere was different. The air was no longer thick with the weight of their struggle. They had proven their point, and the world had taken notice. The days of fighting for recognition, for their rights, for their place in history, were behind them. Now, they were standing on the precipice of an entirely new chapter in their lives, one where they weren't just innovators, but pioneers. The company was thriving. Their car had taken the market by storm, and they were quickly becoming household names in the world of innovation. But Alden and Hunter knew that the success of their car was just the beginning. They had set the wheels in motion for something much larger than just a vehicle. It was a movement, a shift in the way people thought about technology, sustainability, and progress. As the two men sat across from one another, a sense of camaraderie and mutual respect filled the room. They had been through so much together, from the rise of Miles' empire to the court battles and media frenzy. But now they were in control. They had built something that could change the world, and they weren't about to stop there. "Do you ever think about what we've accomplished?" Hunter asked, his voice filled with awe. Alden looked out the window, his mind racing with possibilities. "All the time. It's hard not to. We've come so far, but there's still so much left to do." Hunter smiled. "What's next for us? What's the next big step?" Alden turned to face him. "We've proven that we can innovate, that we can change the game. Now, we need to make sure this car isn't just a one-time thing. We need to create an entire line of products that redefine what technology can do for humanity." Hunter nodded. "You mean we're not stopping with just this model?" Alden shook his head. "No, this is just the beginning. We have the power to revolutionize industries, transportation, energy, communication. We have the resources now, the credibility, and the vision. We could take on anything." There was a brief silence as both men reflected on their words. They had come from humble beginnings, two young dreamers with a vision, and now they were standing at the helm of a multi-billion-dollar company. But the true weight of their success wasn't just about the money. It was about what they had achieved, how they had fought for something bigger than themselves. They had not only built a car that changed the industry, they had built a legacy. And with that legacy came the responsibility to keep pushing forward, to keep dreaming, to keep innovating. In the months that followed, Alden and Hunter began to assemble an even larger team of engineers, designers, and thinkers. They weren't content to simply rest on their laurels. The automotive industry was just the start. They wanted to revolutionize the way people interacted with technology. They began to lay the groundwork for a new kind of vehicle, one that wasn't just eco-friendly, but also smart, autonomous, and seamlessly integrated with every aspect of a person's life. They were already discussing ideas for electric trucks, drones for deliveries, and autonomous public transport systems. But their vision extended beyond the vehicle itself. They wanted to create a world where people were connected not just by roads, but by a shared vision of sustainability and progress. The future isn't just about what we can build, Alden said during one of their strategy meetings. It's about how we build it. It's about creating a system that works for everyone, consumers, businesses, and the planet. Hunter was equally passionate, and we can do it. We've already proven that we can make a difference. Now we just need to scale it. Alden and Hunter weren't the only ones watching the rise of their company. The competition was fierce, and it wasn't long before other automakers began to take notice. They had seen what Alden and Hunter had accomplished with their car, and now they were scrambling to catch up. One of the largest auto manufacturers in the world, Global Motors, was the first to take a direct interest. The CEO, Olivia Carter, a shrewd businesswoman with a reputation for playing hardball, reached out to Alden and Hunter for a meeting. The two men were initially skeptical. After everything they had been through, they weren't sure if they could trust the corporate giants who had once dismissed their vision. But after several rounds of negotiations, it became clear that Olivia wasn't just interested in acquiring their company. She was interested in a partnership, one that would allow them to leverage Global Motors' global presence while still retaining control of their brand and vision. This isn't about buying your company, Olivia had said in the first meeting. It's about joining forces to make something even bigger. Together, we can change the future of transportation. It was a tempting offer. With Global Motors' vast resources, they could scale their operations and bring their vision to life on a global scale. But Alden and Hunter were cautious. They had worked too hard to get where they were, and they weren't about to let anyone take the reins from them. After careful deliberation, they decided to accept the partnership, but on their terms. They would retain full control of the design and innovation side of the business, while Global Motors would help them expand production, marketing, and distribution. It was a delicate balance, one that required trust, but also the understanding that their vision couldn't be compromised. As they sat in the boardroom with Olivia and the rest of the Global Motors team, Alden and Hunter knew that this partnership was the next step in their journey. The world was watching, and now, with the backing of one of the biggest players in the automotive industry, they were ready to take on even bigger challenges. This wasn't just about building cars anymore. This was about changing the world, and they were just getting started. Alden stood by the window once again, gazing out at the horizon. Hunter joined him, a grin spreading across his face. "We've come a long way," Hunter said, his voice filled with admiration. Alden nodded. "But we've only just begun." The future was limitless, and they were ready to seize it together.